All right, so thank you for having me. I was pretty excited about this talk, especially to come here. This is my first ever visit, and it's a very interesting topic, I think. The thing that you need to know about me is I'm a little bit different. So, for instance, my name, Katherine Kirk, is Katherine T. Kirk because I did change my name because of Star Trek. That is the truth. So any Star Trek people out there, I am one of you. And I've taken it, there we are, and I've taken it a little step further as well by changing my name. And yes, my sister is Vanessa Spock. Look it up. Okay, so this slide is merely to tell you a little, have confidence. I have done things for some time and am allowed to be here. The key thing is that I haven't worked in traditional projects which can be solved very easily by implementing something as simple as typical Scrum implementation. So I work where other consultants or managers or people are running one way, and my friends might be in the company with a product they really love and say, can you come and help us? We'd like to make this work anyway. So places where I've worked is research and development in the BBC, where they couldn't use traditional methodologies. And when I say traditional here, I'm talking Scrum or XP, etc. And the other weird thing is that I was brought up in an Aboriginal tribe in the middle of the outback of Australia. My parents were hippies. How do you rebel from hippies? Yeah, you get a master's in software engineering, and you work in technology, and you help banks. My mother is thoroughly ashamed. Okay, the next thing to tell you is, yes, I have ugly slides. Okay, this is because I do have a slight cognitive dysfunction, which means I need to see what I'm actually presenting. And the other reason is because I'm getting stubborn about it now, because everybody wants it to be nice and slick. Yeah? So think of it, Ugly Betty, the program. This is the Ugly Betty of slideshows, and I'm proud. Yeah? But it's got a lot of text because I am Australian and I talk very fast. So the reason I've left it in, to be honest, is so that you can have something to reference to. And I have a lot of subject matter to cover, and that's because Eduardo over here recommended me, and I got very excited, and I thought maybe a ton of you are the same as Eduardo, and I want to share all the information I can so I can have interesting conversations, because I hear that you guys are pretty innovative in your thinking. Right, so this is a good place for me to dump a lot of information to see your opinion. So let me start very quickly. Agile and lean. I have neither got a problem with Agile, and I'm neither saying that it's the best thing in the world. All I'm saying is it's far from perfect. It works quite well for what it's supposed to do. It is what it is, and we are where we are. And I'm assuming we have a general basic knowledge of what Agile is and lean is. I'm not going to explain that. What I'm talking about here is why Agile and lean can make it worse. And in this case, it is actually, for me, people problems, right? Because in some cases, with these edge cases that I work with, difficult projects, it seems that Agile and lean can increase people pain. It can, in my view. You may not agree with that, and that's fine. And I think this is because our industry is mainly people interacting with people to make tools which people use to interact. I think that's the problem. If we didn't have people, everything would be fine. We know this, right? Technical conference. So interactions go up, and we start doing more politics. So my focus is that when I go to these, even teams that are very difficult scenarios, even if they're highly technical, it always ends up, it's something to do with people. So this has led me to become, somebody who goes around and talks about dealing with people. That's how it's happened. And this is just based on experience. This is not a theory, okay? And some of you are probably super educated and can see many inconsistencies in what I'm talking about. That's fine. You can come correct me afterwards, and I appreciate that, because I'm actually trying to change the way we think, not necessarily change what you do. So if you think you've come up with something better, please do a conference talk, get out there. So I'm just trying to focus and generate discussion. In this, I asked, so Alistair Cockburn is a very, very dear friend of mine, which sounds so egotistical, but if you knew him, you'd know that's quite an achievement. And in terms of his personality, he knows what I'm saying. Whoa, I didn't do a thing. Here we go. Oh, I better not touch it. So, lovely. Was that me? All right, that's fine. So he said, if you're going to tell anything, tell it in the form of a story. And I said, well, I'm not sure what sort of story I can give. And he said, just talk about it from your point of view. So that's what I'm going to do. This is all his fault. So I'm going to talk about my tribal perspective to explain a little bit about Agile and Lean. Then I'm going to talk about my journey in technology. See, it's all about me. The corporate structure and how introverts are in the mix. And then I'm going to talk about why Agile and Lean doesn't always stop politics, so we shouldn't really expect it. And then, because it's me and I'm a little bit different, I will talk about an Eastern philosophy that I've been studying that gives me some skills that helps me work around the problems I've found. That's not an answer I think you need to use, it's just the way I've dealt with it. So, introduction. Apparently, politics has been around a lot longer than Agile and Lean. 2,500 years ago, Aristotle wrote about politics. We must remember that politics, the people playing politics, is a very strong urge inside of human beings and how they interact. And people will die for their country based on politics. So how are we going to expect them to let go of that little piece of technology that they really want to use? Yeah? They might die for that. We have had some of these situations happen, which is, this is when I'm doing my Agile Lean coaching and I will have an executive come up and say, I'm all about trust, so don't mention any of what we're speaking to anyone. That's where we have two faces, right? CEO says, stop mentioning tech debt, right? It's depressing me and not in line with our innovation strategy. And that's asking me to pretend reality is a different thing to make him happy. But politics is a symptom. It's just a reaction because we're frustrated, we have pain, we have fear. It's natural. It's going to keep happening. So let me come back to me and talk about the tribal view. So in my view, Agile and Lean isn't a tribe, because when I grew up in the tribe, a tribe is like nationality, right? Like German or wherever. But it does have a tribal way of working. The way that it works is a little tribal. I'll explain. So in this tribe I was in, it's called the Pitjantjatjara tribe. And it's in the desert. There's lots of space, harsh context. Whoever was best to be leading at the time did. So they didn't have one particular king or leader. And we had specialists like hunters and foragers, elders and facilitators. But the thing was, we didn't live in speciality, we lived as a family group. So we might have collaborating as a family group, one hunter, forager, elder, and facilitator. And then whoever had the expertise at the time, if we were hunting for something, the hunter's in charge, right? We're gathering something, the gatherer's in charge. Agile is similar. I call this in my head, this is not a technical term, neither is it got any theory behind it. In my head, I call this a rotational hierarchy. So it's a family group who collaborate to survive, and they lead when required. They have their different peer groups up there that they share and compete against. They might have a hunting event, for instance. But you don't have all the hunters living together. They collaborate. And that's kind of, to my mind, why I fell into Agile and Lean quite easily. Because it's similar. You have specialists, technical, design, facilitators, etc., working in an innovative, harsh environment, and they collaborate together as a group. When it's technical, the tech leads. When it's to do with design, the designer leads, etc., etc., etc. But the reason that they collaborate, the reason technical people put up with people like me, and collaboration scenarios is because techies' peer group or hierarchy measures them against knowledge. That's the thing, right? If I get more knowledge, I am elevated in my peer group, the technical peer group. So I will put up with all this huggy stuff so that I get to learn innovative things, so that I can go and show my innovative things to my peer group. That's how it kind of works. In my head, remember, this is just all in my crazy head. Political science has already thought about this, so if there are any young, bright minds that want to go and explore it, please do. Please start examining this, thinking about this in terms of your company, and bringing the information back into conferences and the industry. This is just clashing structures, right? We have the corporate structure here that's static, and then we have this tribal, rotational structure here that's rotating, and they hit at a certain point, and that causes friction. And political science examines hierarchy, adhocracy, and holacracy. And holacracy, you can pay a guy some money, and he will tell you all about it, apparently. Isn't that nice? So, go and explore that. I'm not going to talk about this. I just wanted to make mention. So you can imagine, back to me, when I was about 20 years old, which is only a couple of years ago, my viewpoint when I was younger was when I saw corporations coming from the tribal environment, I was amazed. I thought it was fantastic. It was the best thing I'd ever seen. You know, everything was structured. There were uniforms. There was things like money. You get paid instead of having to negotiate favors. Okay? The language is very limited in terms of numbers. There's only 3. Kuchu, Kuchara, Mankurpa. After that, it's Winky. So I can say, Eduardo, you owe me Winky. And he's going to say to me, no, it says Winky. Or I could say, Mankurpa, 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 Mankurpa. Let's not go there. But my point being that this was a much more exact way of measurement. I liked it, thought it was great. And then I found this strange thing. So in the tribe, the elders were people who had seen many, many seasons, many patterns. And they were able to give us vast amounts of knowledge. They'd sit under a tree and look pretty lazy, and then we'd say, we're going to go over there, and they'll say, We'll say, how come? They go, it's going to rain, and there's no shelter. And so we would save ourselves a lot of time by using them. But in this society, the leaders were self-interested, manipulative, charming, unfeeling, and they pretended to care, but they didn't really. And I was quite shocked. I thought, how does this happen? This is called psychopathic behavior, right? And this, when I saw this documentary in 2003, I realized what was going on. Basically, this documentary talks about that a corporation is seen in a court of law as being an entity, just like a human being. So they say, well, that's fine. I want to see what sort of human being is a corporation. They go through this big documentary and they find out it's a psychopath. Great. So that's the structure, a psychopathic structure that we are within. So obviously, the same as everybody else, I came along to technology. And in technology, I found out it attracts psychopaths. Fantastic. And there's some data that will show that they're actually attracted quite a lot to technology because there's a lot of money to be made and a lot of attention and fame and fortune. And you can read books like Snakes in Suits to examine that a little more. So we now know that today we have these historical, legal and financial structures that encourage psychopathic behavior. Now, I got a bit misinterpreted from this talk that I was talking about psychopaths, but please don't be worried. Psychopaths are less than 3% of the population and most of them are in prison, right? So we're okay, we're safe. But this structure that comes from the old style way of managing factories and the old style way of managing money makes us behave like psychopaths, and we need to be aware of that. That's all I'm saying for now. All right, and here's the funny thing. Compassion, which is what compassion psychopaths don't have, literally, physically, in their brains. They don't, the part of the brain that lights up for compassion does not engage with a psychopath. They cannot understand empathy deeply. Fine, we understand that. However, here's the scary thing. People can turn off their compassion and think like a psychopath. Just keep that in mind. And if you look at a study of 203 people, which isn't everybody in the world, but you can see they had management potential. So they went and studied a group of people that had management potential, and they found that the rate of psychopathic behaviour was much higher than the normal population. Right? So as they rise up into management, they start to exhibit psychopathic behaviour. And on top of that, in the technology industry, I don't know if you can pick this up, but there's a ton of introverts. I am actually one of them, believe it or not. I've learnt to overcome my difficulties. And you can read a book here, Quiet the Power of Introverts, and we're becoming quite popular now, like the Big Bang Theory. And we don't like interacting that much. And that plays in to this whole scenario of why politics gets a bit difficult. Bear with me. This is why, as technology, we kind of like waterfall, and we keep kind of wanting to go back to waterfall because the leader says, go do, right? The psychopathic behaviour, do it. And we as introverts go, okay, but I'm going to write a ton of documentation that's going to prove it's all not my fault. And I don't have to interact with you. It's going to be once every 3 months. Awesome. That's our urge as an industry, as people. I get that. Okay. Here's the big problem. Change, our arch enemy, right? People working with people to make tools that help people interact. Well, hell. That's a lot of interaction when the change rate starts to go up. And so, waterfall started to break because the change rate was getting too high of our industry. So 30 years ago, we could have worked perhaps alongside cement as an industry, nice and predictable, right? 30 years later, we're trying to release 11 times a day at Amazon. This is a lot of change. So even waterfall had to make interaction work. You didn't have to be a genius to work that out. And that's how Agile and Lean developed. I say no more. So industry demand is speeding up, we know that. Yearly releases, quarterly, monthly, fortnightly, daily, hourly. Now we're getting into this whole vibe of continuousness. Don't get me started on continuousness. Stop, Katherine, right? It's about politics. So we say then, why does politics sometimes increase after Agile and Lean's been put into place? Well, here we go. Here's a hint. In a traditional hierarchy, we're asking introverts to have maybe go from 1 fortnightly meeting to 13 minimum if you count all of the stand-ups, right? They're not going to like that. And we're asking the psychopathic boss, he says, well, he wants to just tell you what to do, and you do it. That's a traditional hierarchy. And then we're saying, well, actually, now we're going to turn around to you and say, maybe we will do it, but maybe we won't. But why are we doing that? Because of the rate of change. Not because the boss is a mean person or the introverts are idiots. This is just because of change, right? Interactions are increasing because we are responding to the rate of change, and every time there's a piece of change, because there's lots of people working together, we all have to adjust and talk about it. You know, meetings upon meetings upon meetings. So it's simple. Here's the equation I sort of thought about was, all our people problems come from the fact that we have this psychopathic self-interested behaviour, added to it a ton of introverts that don't really want to have to deal with too much interaction, add to it this high-pressure change over the last 30 years, add to that this tribal rotational hierarchy, okay? And then a traditional static hierarchy sits over the top. And that is, all squeezed together, a potential hotbed of hell. That's the constraints. That comes from the world changing faster than ever. It comes from being pioneers, living in a time when it's all new. We love it and we hate it. It's not your fault, you see? If you all got hit by a car, then you would end up the next day someone would create politics again. It's not your fault. But we do have to deal with it because the industry demand is speeding up, interactions are increasing, and Agile and Lean is not a magic bullet. It's good, but it can only do so much. It's a behaviour framework in my head. It adapts the people system to the rate of change. So it tries to optimise the system to demand, and it's a good first step. It has awesome tools. I'm not denying it. There they are, some of them that I have used. But here's the thing. Any tool that you have can have a different reaction from a different person. Anybody done Kanban boards? Yeah, okay. So you get really excited about Kanban and you think, I'm going to display all of our dysfunctional system onto a board and I'm going to show it to everyone and they're going to go, yay! Doesn't happen, does it? I learned that the hard way. And so we think our great idea is going to be accepted by somebody, but it doesn't necessarily mean it will be so. So we have to now think and understand that our approach to doing tools, our approach to Agile, our approach to Lean, our approach to practices is really going to be the thing that affects the outcome of people problems. Approach affects interactions. Have a think about it. I demand you comply is one approach to ask for something. Another way is, would you mind participating? They're both acts that are requesting something, but they have a different approach, a different way. Approach influences outcome. That's what I found. So, what I found works for me, because if I walked out of the room now and said, thank you very much, you'd be annoyed. So I have to demonstrate how I've tried to solve this. Doesn't mean it's perfect. And I would love to see you guys try and solve it yourselves in different and creative ways. So here we have a rapidly changing industry that relies on innovation and deals with tricky technical and people problems. So we need help to get insight quickly, right? And dealing with people. So I lent on Eastern philosophy. That's what I specialize in now, because it focuses on eliminating suffering to do with your approach, how you see and respond to the world, and to do with people and interactions. So I figured that was a nice place to be. Plus I had 12 years of experience in it, so I guess it was natural. And I created a number of things in my workshops which are similar to this, where you can take an idea you've had, run it through a few checks on a list like this, and double check that your approach will be successful in the context with these people, because that changes a lot. Here is somebody I've tortured. Right there, that's the head of business analysis in Springer. We're going through a merger right now, but we are using this particular technique. So I'll explain it a little bit, and it's not to show off my skills, it's more to show how approach can influence, and to see if I can get you thinking yourselves about how you might try different ways in the future. So, how do I cool down politics? Well, obviously, I use Agile and Lean and their tools. That goes without saying, because they are already there to help us adapt to the rate of change. But here's the thing. It's vital that I use these tools in a way that suits the context. So you have to take time to contemplate the way you're going to do it, the approach. Drama breeds drama. So when you have a dramatic situation, trying to put in a dramatic solution doesn't always work. So the best thing to do is to get calm, avoid knee-jerking, and see the whole. So here comes a bit of the Eastern philosophy. There are 4 words that I find help. Equanimity. This is the opposite of equanimity is high emotion, prejudice. You're already attached to the outcome. You have your own personal opinion. So the opposite is when you get a group of people, you've got to think through what techniques can I use so that they can get into a state, a scientific state almost, where they are calm, open, and curious. That would help. So you need techniques. So they can see really what is. And here's the thing, because you can't get where you want to go without knowing what is and where you currently are. So if I said I want to go to Germany, and someone said to me, well, I'm in Germany, where are you? I said, I don't know where I am. How are they going to lead me to Germany? So it's very important to have the bravery, the calmness to see the situation for what it is. That's what Kanban sometimes helps us do. It might not be pleasant. Choose tools and practices that take the emotion out of the situation at that point. But this is why psychopaths are appreciated in our industry, because they can turn off the emotion. They're very useful. I've worked with a few. Very useful in meetings where everyone's too emotional and they come in, I see the data. They're a little bit self-interested, right? But this can turn into indifference and apathy. So I've got a little story that I'm going to build here. So equanimity would be seeing what is. So you can say, I see that I eat a lot of junk food. But there's no action there, is there? So we need to facilitate some insight. Now this is handy. This is something all of us do in our industry. We try always to get an accurate and deep understanding. It's not being right. It's not knowing best. What it is really understanding the situation. And often as engineers or people who work with engineers, we think all we have to do is give people insight to the situation. They'll say, yes, I love your solution. We get very upset when that doesn't happen. But we need it. Otherwise, if we don't understand, we will be destined to repeat the destructive behavior. So, in our Agile Lean toolbox, we need to choose tools that help the group of people we're working with come to a point of insight. So calm down and then come to a point, aha, I understand the situation enough. But even insight and equanimity together, they don't create action, you see. I eat a lot of junk food, equanimity. I understand why, and I know I shouldn't eat junk food. But you still do, right? We often think, I know, therefore you should know. This is a set of post-it notes that happened a couple of weeks ago where I was in a meeting and all the people did was say, I want you to have that insight and that insight and that insight and that insight and that insight, and we'd all get along. Didn't work out. So we have to add something to instigate action, correct? And this is where it took me quite a few years to do this. Being that I'm female, I have blonde hair, I wear makeup, and now I'm standing in front of a group of technical people saying, let's talk about compassion. Yeah. But you all know, being geeks, what it's like to be the odd one out, right? Okay, so we know people interacting with people to create tools for people to interact is the situation we are in. And I'm talking about compassion here in terms of a model, not a hug. So, we can create solutions which people will buy into and actually follow through on if we can have compassion for their situation. I want you to have insight. Well, what do any of you feel like doing? Is it possible you can do these things? Am I going to be able to have the skills to give you those insights? What sort of knowledge do we need? Compassion as a model helps us to anticipate the likelihood of initiative success. Right? This is this whole thing. A deep awareness of the suffering of another person coupled with the wish to relieve it. It's not sympathy, which is you poor thing. Glad it's not me. Empathy, which is, wow, you're apathetic. Me too. Right? That's identifying too much. Compassion is where, wow, this isn't good. How can we make it better? It has some action in it. Right? A step forward to a solution. Professor Singer from Germany has done a lot of research in this area. Some people criticize her. You know, it's an interesting area. And she said that empathy can lead to burnout. So you can empathize so much with people's situation that in the end you feel as hopeless as they do. But she noticed that in brain scans, I don't know which type of brain scan, if they used compassion, it activated the brain network associated with affiliation and reward, and people were able to do compassionate things for very long periods of time. It made them feel good, right? Bear with me. So here's the action bit. I see I eat a lot of junk food, equanimity. I understand why and know I shouldn't eat junk food. That's insight. I feel how much this affects my body, my family, and my future. And that's when the action comes in. So I'm going to. That's why compassion is very important when you have people working with people. Psychopaths will tell you, don't worry about it. Don't worry about empathy. And Andy McNabb has written a book with someone from Oxford, and he trains up all the CEOs that are willing to buy his book. And he says, get rid of the empathy. Focus on what you've got to do. Not sure he's worked in technology. And this is where psychopathic behaviour starts to fail us. That's that level, the hierarchy versus the tribal way of working. Psychopaths aren't able to access the database of compassion in order to understand what a people-orientated solution or initiative might be like to experience, right? They can't use compassion tools to imagine how the people solution might go wrong because people wouldn't like it done to them. A bit difficult with knowledge workers. And we need to use compassion to test our ideas because people are individual and the combinations are infinite. The tools and techniques that you use have multiple effects depending on the context that you're in. So don't assume you know everybody's reaction. I think you'll be quite honest to say that you usually get more surprised by people's reactions than, oh yes, they did what I expected at work anyway. So one of the things I'll do is empathy map an approach or an idea. So even if you decided to do end-to-end testing, you might decide, let's empathy map and find out the people we're about to torture, how are they going to feel about it? Just download it from the internet. It's free for all. And then the fourth thing that I found in Eastern philosophy that's very useful is grit and wisdom. So we live in a society which doesn't value this. Well, they didn't until continuousness turned up. Continuous innovation, continuous improvement, continuous, et cetera, delivery. And now we have to have grit and determination because we keep getting hit with consequence all the time. We can't run away in 3 months when things don't turn out when we released it terribly. No, we're releasing nearly every day now. So bang, that didn't work. Oh, what do we do now? So grit and wisdom is suddenly more important, and we need to train ourselves up in that. So of course you do things like continuous short cycles of action and experiments. Stay the course. So it's not being one-eyed or stubborn, it's not doing a repetitive action without thinking, it's experiments and learning, wise resilience. And when I do some of the workshops I've done, the most favourite solutions people have to generate grit are, or my favourite, are fun, curiosity, because you can keep doing that for quite some time. So in summary, in this ever-changing technology industry, I think we've got to really be aware we are people interacting with people to make software for people to interact. And Agile and Lean are great, but it's not that they're not a magic bullet. That's okay. It doesn't mean that we drop them. It means we now have to take it to the next level to deal with the continuousness, the continuous onslaught of demand from the technology industry that we're in. We need to remember that there's a bigger picture as to why we behave with each other the way we do. It's not necessarily personal. Psychopathic behaviour that is generated by old legal and financial structures. Introverts avoiding interaction, high-pressure change environment, collaborative, interactive, tribal, lean, and agile, and pressure from this static hierarchy that sits bang over the top. So it's not your fault, but we have to deal with it, and I'd love us as an industry to start thinking within this space. Let's not be afraid of the constraints. Let's innovate in a very innovative time. Try to get equanimity with the people you work with. Try to educate them with the things they need to have insight. Try to compassion map, empathy map, what people around you are experiencing. And focus in on this grit and sustainability. Expect politics in advance. Think about your approach, because that's where you can make a hell of a difference, truly. Well, in my personal experience. These guys think so. She's smiling. But we just chucked up, this is a testing initiative we were thinking about, and we've got equanimity at the top, insight, compassion, grit. In the first column is what we would like, and the second column is how we think we should go about it. It's as simple as that. Here's the ugliest slide you'll ever see. Then you remember this one. So we have equanimity, getting a balanced state with the people you're working with. Tool yourself up. Yes, we have a lot of insight, but what do we need to know to have a deeper understanding of the real situation that's there? Empathy map. Think about the impact of what this feels like to go through, what it feels like for these people to go through. And stick with that grit. Develop the grit and determination. And I know this is a different perspective, but I'm just trying to open up discussion. And with my blonde hair and being female in the technology industry, I'm saying, I encourage you, technical people, to research the power of compassion mapping. Thank you very much.